I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the headlights pointed straight into the sky. My shift at Pinewood Memorial had just ended. It was almost midnight, and the Montana blizzard was the worst I had ever driven through. Snow hit my windshield so hard it felt like someone was throwing handfuls of ice at the glass. I was exhausted after 12 hours on my feet, and all I wanted was to reach my cabin 5 miles down the road. But that strange glint of metal on the side of Route 16 made my heart stop. I almost kept driving. I wish I could say I made a smart choice, but the truth is, it was instinct. Paramedic instinct. Before my brain could yell at me to stay inside the truck, I had already pulled onto the shoulder and grabbed my emergency kit. The cold punched me in the face the moment I stepped out. Snow swallowed my boots up to my knees as I pushed toward the guardrail. The twisted shape of a black Bentley lay deep down the ravine, crushed against a pine tree. Steam hissed out of the hood and turned to frost in the freezing air. I saw blood smeared across the broken window. Whoever had been in that car was alive long enough to crawl out. That thought alone made my stomach twist. I followed the streak of red in the snow, my flashlight shaking in my numb hand. The wind howled like it was warning me to turn around. But I kept going until the beam of my light hit something dark beneath a heavy pine branch. A man. He was lying face down in the snow. A tall man in a suit that probably cost more than my paycheck. Blood covered his left side. When I rolled him carefully onto his back, my breath caught in my throat. 2 gunshot wounds. One through his shoulder, another lodged deep in his side. These were not from the crash. His eyes opened weakly, dark and unfocused. His lips moved, forming a name that sounded like Francesco before he slipped away again. I should have called for backup. I knew that. But no ambulance could make it through a storm like this, and he was already fading. If I didn't act fast, he would die right there in the snow. "I'm going to help you," I whispered, though I doubted he could hear me. My fingers worked by muscle memory. I cut away his shirt, exposing scars that told stories I didn't want to imagine. I packed the wounds with gauze, wrapped them tight, and then somehow managed to haul him upward, dragging his heavy body through the snow toward my truck. Twice I slipped. Twice we almost slid back down the ravine. Every muscle in my body burned, but the thought of leaving him was worse. By the time I got him into the cab, I was shaking so hard I could barely turn the key. The 3-mile drive to my cabin felt endless. The truck fishtailed more than once as the storm grew worse, whiteout swallowing the world outside the windows. I kept glancing at the man beside me. His breathing turned shallow. His skin grew colder. I kept talking to him even though he never answered. Anything to keep him anchored to life. When my cabin finally appeared through the snow, I almost cried in relief. Inside, my living room became a trauma room in seconds. I cleared the table with my arm, sent books and mugs flying, and laid him down. His suit was ruined, soaked with blood. His skin had turned a waxy pale color that terrified me. The wounds were deeper than I had hoped, and the bullet in his side required removing. The kind of procedure I was not supposed to do outside a hospital. But there was no hospital. Only me, my training, and a stranger who looked like he had already lived through a lifetime of violence. I sterilized my tweezers in the flame of the stove and removed the bullet. It clinked into a metal bowl, and the sound echoed through the cabin like a warning. His body didn't flinch. Not a twitch. That scared me more than anything else. Through the night, I kept him alive. I changed compresses, monitored his breathing, and whispered anything that came to mind to keep myself from panicking. Around 3 in the morning, he grabbed my wrist in a fever dream and muttered words that sent chills through me. Ambush. Traitor. Shipment. Family meeting. When the fever finally broke at dawn, I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes for just a moment. That was when I felt someone staring at me. I opened my eyes and found him awake. Not feverish, not confused. Awake. And the look in his dark eyes was not the look of a normal patient. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low and rough. Controlled. "I'm Lydia Hayes," I said. "I'm a paramedic. I found you on Route 16. You were injured. I brought you here." He tried to sit up. The attempt sent a flash of pain across his face, but he hid it quickly. Too quickly. "Where's my phone?" he asked. "Destroyed in the crash." I answered. "And you're not calling anyone until I know you're stable." His gaze sharpened like a blade. Heavy, assessing, dangerous. "What's your name?" I asked. A beat of silence passed. "Dante Blackwell," he said. Something in the way he said it told me that wasn't the whole truth. And then everything changed. Engines rumbled outside. Not one. Not two. Dozens. Growing louder. Closer. Dante went rigid. "Stay away from the windows," he ordered. But I was already moving toward them when the first vehicle appeared through the snow. A black SUV. Then another. Then 5. Then 20. Then dozens more. My heart slammed against my ribs as the entire clearing filled with black vehicles. 500 SUVs surrounding my quiet Montana cabin. And every single one of them had come for him. Or for me. The knock on my door was so sharp it made my whole body jerk. I froze where I stood, my breath trapped in my chest. Outside, more engines growled as dozens of men stepped out of the black SUVs. They formed a wide circle around my cabin, their dark suits and tactical gear sharp against the snow. I had never seen anything like it. Dante didn't look surprised. He only looked tired, in a way that didn't match the danger outside. His voice was calm when he spoke. "Answer the door." Slowly. My hands shook as I reached for the knob. When I pulled the door open, a tall man with a buzz cut and a blank military face stood there. Snow clung to his coat, and an earpiece curled along the side of his head. "Miss Hayes?" he asked, though he already knew. "We need to see Mr. Blackwell. Now." Before I could speak, Dante's voice came from behind me. "Let them in." Quote. The man stepped aside, and suddenly my small cabin filled with people, armed, organized, moving with precision like a private army. My kitchen table transformed into a command center within minutes. Laptops opened. Phones rang. Men whispered orders in low, controlled tones. I stood near the wall, holding myself still. My home didn't feel like mine anymore. Dante sat in the center of it all, wrapped in my blankets, pale but steady. His presence alone controlled the room. Every order he gave was followed instantly. A part of me finally understood. This man was no ordinary victim. He was someone powerful. Someone dangerous. As I watched him work, bits of truth came through the chaos. He wasn't just a mafia boss. He was the boss, head of a syndicate spread across the East Coast. And everything happening tonight was because someone had tried to kill him. Someone close. Someone named Francesco. I noticed one man in particular, a silver-haired, sharp-eyed figure who moved like he owned the air around him. He approached Dante without hesitation, and others stepped aside to give him room. His name was Francesco Calder. Second in command. Trusted. Respected. He introduced himself to me with a smile that never touched his eyes. "A paramedic living in the middle of nowhere," he said quietly. "A miracle find for a man with gunshot wounds." It sounded like an accusation. "Are you saying I planned this?" I asked. "I'm saying," he replied, leaning in just slightly, "coincidences are rare in our world." My hands were ice cold. I didn't know if I wanted to scream or run. But Dante watched the exchange from across the room. His dark eyes followed every move Francesco made. He didn't interrupt, but something in his gaze told me he saw more than he said. Hours passed like that, tension thickening the air. When night settled, Dante's fever returned. I worked at his side again, wiping his forehead with cool cloths, checking the wounds, fighting the infection that still threatened him. He gripped my wrist suddenly. "Don't trust Francesco," he murmured through the fever, voice raw. "He wants the old ways. He wants me gone." Quote. He drifted off again, leaving me with a breath I couldn't release. The next morning, the storm broke. sunlight sparkling across the snow, but the uneasy calm inside my cabin didn't break with it. Something felt wrong the moment Francesco's team returned from the crash site. They dragged a man through the snow, bound, bleeding, barely standing. They threw him to his knees outside the porch as if offering him up. Dante pushed through his pain and made his way outside with help from 2 guards. I followed him, heart pounding. "What is this?" he demanded. Francesco stepped forward, hands behind his back like a soldier in formation. "We found your driver hiding in a cabin," he said. "He confessed. He planned the ambush. He worked with our enemies." The driver shook his head so fast he nearly fell over. "They tortured me," he cried. "Boss, I swear I didn't betray you." "It was Francesco who—" Francesco cut him off by pulling a gun in one smooth motion. Lies from a desperate traitor. My stomach twisted. I could feel the truth hanging in the air, like static. Dante stared at Francesco with an expression I couldn't read. Then he turned back to his men. "Bring him inside," he said. "Alive!" Inside the cabin, Dante questioned the driver with the calm precision of a surgeon. Francesco's lies started unraveling piece by piece. Every answer the driver gave cracked another seam. Every timeline detail pulled another thread loose. Dante's eyes sharpened. "Check Francesco's phone records," he said to his most trusted lieutenant. "Compare them to the security changes." Minutes passed, tense, silent. Then the truth came out like a blade. Francesco had changed the route. Francesco had dismissed security. Francesco had been talking to rivals. Francesco wanted the throne. Francesco wanted Dante dead. The room erupted as sides formed. Guns raised. Men yelled. My heart felt like it would burst from my chest. I pressed myself against the wall, praying to simply vanish as tension threatened to explode. It was Dante who ended it. "Take him to the storage shed," he ordered. "No one touches him. He faces justice in Boston." Quote. Francesco's eyes burned into Dante's like fire as he was dragged away. "This isn't over," he hissed. "Half your men already answer to me." That night, a heavy silence filled the cabin. Dante refused to rest. He sat upright the entire time, pale and shaking but determined. I stayed close because something in the air felt wrong, like calm before lightning. "You are making yourself a target," I whispered. "If I hide," he said softly, "I'm already dead." At 2 in the morning it happened. A blast shook the cabin. Gunfire followed. Windows shattered. Men screamed. The attack was fast and merciless. Francesco's men had returned. "Lydia," Dante said, grabbing my arm, "move now." Smoke swirled in the air as bullets tore through the walls. I ducked, scrambled, crawled. Dante stayed in front, protecting me, even though he could barely stand. We reached the mudroom. The garage. The reinforced SUV waiting in the shadows. "On 3, he whispered. "Run!" We sprinted. Bullets struck the floor behind us. One grazed his shoulder. He didn't slow. He pushed me into the passenger seat and climbed behind the wheel. The SUV roared forward, smashing through the garage door. Snow exploded around us as we tore down the road, gunfire echoing behind us. My cabin was burning in the rearview mirror. My life was burning with it. "I'm sorry," Dante said, breath heavy with pain. "I never meant to bring this to you." But it was too late. I was already in it, and there was no way back. The abandoned church appeared through the falling snow, like a ghost from another lifetime. Its stone walls were cracked, the windows boarded, and the roof sagged under years of storms. Dante parked the armored SUV behind a row of old pines, hidden from the road. His breathing was sharp, uneven, and when he stepped out, his knees almost buckled. "Sit," I said, grabbing his arm before he could fall. He didn't argue. That alone scared me more than the gunfire we had fled. Inside the church, the air was cold enough to sting my lungs. Dust floated in pale beams of moonlight that slipped through the holes in the roof. The pews were broken and warped. The place had been abandoned for decades, yet it felt strangely safe in the chaos of everything else. I helped Dante sit on a bench that was still intact. His shirt was soaked with blood again. His wounds had reopened from the fight and the escape, and he was pale in a way that made panic claw at my chest. "You're losing too much blood," I said, pulling open my medical bag. "You can't keep moving like this." He gave a small, tired smile. "I have no choice." "Then let me do my job," I said, more forcefully than I intended. For once he didn't argue. He watched me as I cleaned the new bleeding, stitched what I could, and wrapped fresh bandages. His eyes were dark, tired, and searching. When the silence stretched too long, I finally asked, "Why does Francesco hate you this much? This isn't about power. This is personal." Dante exhaled slowly, like the weight of years sat on his shoulders. "My father built our world on fear," he said. "Francesco was his blade, his shadow, the man who followed orders without question." "And you're not like that," I said softly. "No, I'm not." His voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. "I've been trying to change everything. Turn our operations legitimate. Build something that won't destroy the next generation. People like Francesco see that as weakness. They want the violence back, the brutality, the old world." It was strange hearing a Mafia boss speak about peace like that. Stranger still that I believed him. We talked until dawn. I didn't plan for it to happen, but he opened up about things I wasn't sure he had ever shared with anyone else. How he inherited the entire empire at 23, how the power came with chains, how he felt alone in rooms full of people who claimed loyalty but wanted his throne. "You shouldn't be here," he said at one point, watching me work with gentle concern. "You should be home, safe, far away from all this." "My home burned down tonight," I said quietly. "I don't have anywhere else to go." Something flickered in his eyes, guilt, anger at himself, a softness he tried to hide. Before I could say more, a sudden knock echoed through the church. I froze. Dante pulled his gun with lightning-fast reflexes despite the pain. He motioned for me to stay back as he approached the door, the barrel steady even though his hand shook from blood loss. The door creaked open, and a young man stepped inside. He couldn't have been more than 20. He wore tactical gear, hands raised in surrender. "Julian," Dante breathed out in relief. "How did you find us?" Julian lowered his hands. "GPS tracker in the Suburban, boss. I came alone." His eyes flicked to me, filled with curiosity. He tried to hide. "Francesco is telling everyone you're dead," Julian said quickly. "He's calling a meeting tonight with the lieutenants to take full control." Dante's expression hardened, his exhaustion falling away as something sharper took its place. Purpose. "Who still stands with me?" Dante asked. Julian didn't hesitate. "The younger teams. The ones running the legitimate businesses. About 40% of the security squads. The old guard is scared but watching. Waiting." "Then we have a chance," Dante said. He stood, but I caught his arm when he swayed. "You need rest." "If I rest," he said quietly, "Francesco wins. My men die, and you remain hunted for saving me." The truth hit me like a punch. I wasn't just a witness anymore. I wasn't just the girl who found him bleeding in the snow. I was tied to whatever fate awaited him. "Then what's the plan?" I asked. Dante looked at me with something almost gentle. "We take back my city." Hours later, Boston's harbor skyline glowed against the night as we entered the old waterfront warehouse where Dante's loyal forces gathered. Men and women from different branches of his syndicate stood in tense circles, whispering about the attempted coup, the betrayal, the chaos. When Dante walked in, leaning on Julian for support, everyone fell silent. The respect in the room was immediate and powerful. Even wounded, he held authority like a crown. He outlined his plan. It wasn't war. It wasn't revenge. It was truth. He would expose Francesco in front of the entire underworld, forcing the other families to see him for the traitor he was. No bullets, no bloodbath. Just facts, evidence, strategy. "You should stay behind," Dante told me as he prepared to leave for the meeting. "This will be dangerous. You've already risked too much." I looked at him and felt an ache I didn't expect. "I saved your life," I said. "Now let me stand with you." He didn't answer right away. His eyes softened, and for a moment everything else faded. Then he nodded. Hours later, we walked into the Westlake Building's grand conference room. 5 crime families sat around a long mahogany table. Guards lined the walls. Francesco stood at the head of the room, wearing a smug expression, until he saw Dante. His face drained of color. His hands trembled. His lie crumbled with a single breath. "Gentlemen," Dante said, voice calm and commanding, "there seems to be confusion. Allow me to clear it." For an hour, Dante dismantled Francesco's story piece by piece. He exposed fake evidence, hidden accounts, secret alliances with rival families. He spoke with the precision of a man who had survived betrayal and learned from it. No shouting, no threats, just truth. When Dante finally finished, the room held its breath. In the old days, he would have killed Francesco on the spot, but Dante looked at him with something deeper than anger. "Your punishment," he said quietly, "will be justice, real justice." Francesco was dragged away in disbelief, screaming that none of this was over. The other families nodded at Dante with new respect, some reluctant, some impressed. When the room emptied, I walked to the balcony with Dante. The city lights shimmered like stars below us. For the first time, the air felt calm. "So what now?" I asked. "Now," he said softly, "everything changes." His hand brushed mine. I didn't pull away. For the first time, I wondered if saving him wasn't an accident, but fate. The city looked calm from the penthouse balcony. Boston's skyline shimmered like a sea of lights, but inside me everything was loud, tangled, and uncertain. I leaned on the railing, feeling the cold metal under my palms. Dante stood beside me, silent, watching the same skyline, but I could feel his attention shift toward me every few seconds. It had been only days since I pulled him out of the snow, but it felt like weeks. Months. My entire world had changed, and I could still smell smoke from the ashes of my cabin in my hair. "I know what you're thinking," Dante said quietly. "No," I murmured. "You really don't." He turned toward me, and the city lights reflected in his dark eyes. They weren't hard or cold the way they had been when I first found him. They were open now, steady, patient, a look he probably never let anyone else see. "You think you don't belong here?" he said. "In this world. Around me." "I don't belong here," I whispered. "I'm a paramedic from a tiny Montana town, and you're whatever this is." I looked around his penthouse. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows. Armed men posted downstairs. My life was normal, Dante. And now half the East Coast criminal world knows my name. He stepped closer, careful not to crowd me. "You saved me," he said, "and not just my life. You saved everything I've been trying to build." "I didn't know who you were," I said. "I wasn't trying to save your empire. I was just trying to save a person in the snow." "That's exactly why you matter," he said softly. His voice made something warm spread across my chest. I hated how much I felt it, how much I wanted to lean into it. Into him. "You're giving me too much credit," I whispered. "And you're giving yourself too little." I looked away, afraid of the weight in his eyes. The room behind us was quiet. His men were gone for the night. The only sound was the soft hum of the city below. "You think choosing me is simple?" I asked. "You think just because I dragged you out of a wreck and stitched you back together, I'm ready for this?" Quote. "For what?" he asked, stepping even closer. I could feel the heat of him now. "Your world," I said. "Your enemies, your past, the danger that follows you like a shadow." He was silent for a moment, and then he said something that made the air shift. "I don't want you in my world, Lydia. I want you in my life. There's a difference." My throat tightened. His voice wasn't commanding. It wasn't cold. It was honest in a way that scared me more than gunfire. I shook my head. "Dante, you're asking me to walk into something I don't understand." "No," he said, touching the railing beside my hand. "Not touching me, just close. I'm asking you not to walk away because you're scared." I closed my eyes. My heart beat too fast. The truth was simple, terrifying. I didn't want to walk away. I wanted to stay. But that choice came with a cost. I lost everything, I said, my voice breaking for the first time. My home, my safety, my whole sense of normal. Dante stepped in front of me then, his movements slow, careful. He placed his hand softly against my cheek, warm, steady. You didn't lose everything, he said. Some things you simply leave behind to make room for the right thing. My breath caught. His other hand brushed my waist, light, gentle. Asking permission. I didn't stop him. I don't know how to do this, I whispered. You don't have to, he said. Just let yourself feel it. The city behind us blurred as he leaned in. His forehead touched mine first, his breath warm, grounding. I felt my fear melt into something softer, something I had been holding back since the storm. When he finally kissed me, it was slow and sure, like he was giving me time to pull away. But I didn't. I leaned in. His hands slid around my waist, drawing me closer. Everything inside me felt unsteady and right at the same time. I didn't know what loving him would mean. I didn't know what dangers waited outside this moment. But for the first time since the blizzard started, I felt safe. Really safe. When we finally pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine again. You pulled me out of the snow, he said softly. Let me pull you into something better. I let out a shaky breath. And what exactly is that? Whatever we choose to build, he said, together. I didn't answer right away, but I didn't step back either. And that was my answer. He smiled, small, real, the kind of smile I knew not many people ever saw from him. Stay with me, he whispered. I nodded once, my heart steady for the first time in days. I'm staying. His arms wrapped around me and I let myself sink into him, into the warmth. Into the wild, impossible truth that somewhere between the snowstorm and the gunfire, my life had changed forever. And maybe, just maybe, it had changed for the better.